staff reports. And the first one is the deliberations on the East Welland Accommodation Review. I have a recommended motion that the report of the Board Administration on the 2009-2010 East Welland Accommodation Review be received and the recommendations adopted. Moved by...
Point of order.
I'm sorry, I'm reading your motion. Moved by...
Point of order. Point of order takes precedence.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes, Trustee Atamanuik. We can't get the motion on the floor first for discussion?
I'm asking who made this recommended motion.
This is the motion that came forward that from the report that we received from staff. I'm not certain of the date of the board meeting, but it was 60 days previously. Sorry, Superintendent Karzinski, the date?
The date of the report is April 13th, 2010.
Thank you. That is where the motion came from.
See, my point has to do with a motion being put on the floor. The chair of the board can't make a motion and cannot force a motion, because that would be the same as making a motion. So I'm suggesting that if somebody is going to make a motion, a trustee would have to, other than the chair, would have to read that motion and propose it.
Actually, when you interrupted me, I was asking for a mover and seconder of the motion. I was not moving the motion myself. Trustee Lemelin.
I move that the motion that East Welland area schools to stay open would be Crowland Central, Princess Elizabeth, and Matthew School. East Welland area schools to close would be Empire and Plymouth schools for instructional purposes as of August 31st, 2011. All Empire students would be directed to Princess Elizabeth, and Plymouth schools will be directed to either Princess Elizabeth or Matthew School. That Matthew School be replaced by New Matthew's 350 pupil school on the present site of Matthew School.
I believe your motion is out of order, Trustee Lemelin. We have a report. The motion will go on the floor as printed in the agenda. I did not note any changes in the agenda when we moved the agenda prior this evening. Then we will have discussion on this motion, and if it is defeated, then a further motion can be accepted on the floor. I will read this motion again. A recommended motion that the report of the Board Administration on the 2009-2010 East Welland Accommodation Review be received and the recommendations adopted. Moved by Trustee Dame, seconded by Trustee Ness. Thank you. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Trustee Dame.
Thank you. After sitting on the committee, listening to the deliberations from a lot of the Crowland parents, having the input from all the other parents from the other schools, it is important that we note that we followed the process. We had a policy in place. The staff presented us with a recommendation. We followed the process as clearly and as appropriately as we could. I congratulate Linda Karzinski for the efforts and her staff, and I think we should move forward with this recommendation.
Anyone else? Trustee Height and then Trustee Love.
Thank you. Just following some of the delegations we heard tonight, and I just tried to add some of the phrases, and we hear them week after week whenever there is an accommodation review that happens. Things about decisions not being taken lightly, or discarding information, listening to all of the information, that it is overwhelming. And certainly for parents on this review and all reviews that sit through this staff as well, it is those binders and digesting it. It's not an easy task, so I have no doubt that everyone involved took the job seriously and spent the time to do it. And it's not a waste of time. It is time consuming, but it's not a waste of time. That input is important. In this particular scenario, I have to agree with speakers tonight in that the status quo isn't viable. It hasn't been viable for our schools for the last number of accommodation reviews we've done, that we've had to make difficult choices because it's not always viable, and we cannot remain what we have. I was pleased at least to hear over this East Welland Accommodation Review is that while someone is always disrupted, we count on the fact that kids are resilient and that they'll move with parents who feel strongly and feel good about it, they can make it work. But recognizing that emotion comes into it, you can't separate it. We are in the people business, not in bricks and mortar, but in people. And so separating that emotion is very difficult, and I feel for all of the parents and kids that are affected by this, but it's not easy to do, but supporting the ARC tonight at least, and when we heard this back in April, that because it's not always that way, and we know in the last 4 years that an ARC recommendation that also is agreed with a staff recommendation does happen. We don't see that all the time. It happened, and so that to me also tells me that although it's a difficult decision and it's not going to be favored by everyone, it is the right decision to make. Thank you.
Trustee Love?
I'm very comfortable with the recommendation because the ARC process, to the best of my knowledge, has been transparent and flawless. And I've spoken earlier to Trustee Larry Lemlin, and he would agree with that, as does So I know that positions of the trustees and positions on that committee are strictly there as advisory, and that the parents make the decision. So I'm very comfortable with the outcome from the staff's point of view and from the parents. I will vote in favor of this motion.
Trustee Mapes?
Chair Fulford. I agree with both Trustee Love and Trustee Hype. Although this was an emotional review, I think at times it was portrayed as pitting the urban interest versus the rural interest, and I don't see it that way. It was unfortunate they came out that way. I think it's strictly a rationalization of resources and facilities, and as it's no secret, our facilities are among the oldest, if not the oldest, in Ontario, and this is one of the only ways we can rejuvenate facilities for students and provide a decent learning environment. And the only way we're able to generate those funds is by closing underutilized buildings, and it's an unfortunate aspect of the ARC process. But I also agree that we did listen to many deliberations, and the recommendations of senior staff and the ARC seem to align. So it tells me that we probably are looking in the right direction. So again, I would support this myself. Thank you.
Anything else? Trustee Lynn Campbell?
Thank you. When I read in the Watson report that in the year 2024, Crowland Central would only have 67 students, I took it upon myself to do some research and tried to think outside the box, using ideas I got in emails and speaking to superintendents, trying to see if there was a way to boost the enrollment at that school, because it's always sad when a school closes. But it seems that it would be robbing Peter to pay Paul. If we have so much declining enrollment, then another school would be half empty and other kids would have to travel, and there was just no easy solution. I represent Niagara-on-the-Lake. We had 5 elementary schools there at the present time. We're cutting down to 3 elementary schools. One of them is a new school, and you wouldn't believe the excitement in the community amongst the parents and the students for this new school. And I'm thinking that this would be a wonderful thing for Welland to experience and enjoy as well. And although it can be sad sometimes to say goodbye to the past, the future might be brighter. Thank you.
Trustee Lemon?